And I want to turn to Ms. Howard again if you have any reports. Mr. Liverman, Mr. Miller, any reports? Oh, yep, we can go back to Ms. Howard.
I'm sorry. Just wanted to report that one interesting and I guess unanticipated, at least on my part, side effect of the bizarrely warm weather has been disruption of our deer management program. So just wanted to report that basically the problem with it getting too warm is that there's now greenery for the deer to eat, so the bait is less effective, and so the program is clearly going to be less effective than in the past than we anticipated. And I think what we need to come back, we're trying to figure out, we may need to cut it short just because it may be ineffective and it may be a waste of resources, and we may have to think about next year moving it earlier when we are certain it'll be really cold. I mean, not that, I mean, anyway, yeah, I mean, it's, who knows? The state has not wanted us to hold it earlier, so that may be an issue. Patricia, have I accurately captured where we are? Or?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, we've run into this issue in previous years where it can get warmish in February. I don't think in prior years we've actually had summer in February. But I mean, if any of you have just walked down the street, you can see everything's budding out, grass is growing, so the deer have plenty to eat and they're not coming to the bait piles. White buffalo reached out to me because I think at this point it's an issue of severely diminishing returns, and they're very conscious about not spending your money if they're not getting the results. So we're in communication with them. We're looking into the best options, but it's Heather said it, or Councilwoman Howard, it may be just, we may have to cut the program short this year.
So no council action is necessary, but just wanted to give you that update, and we'll, you know, if we do that, we'll obviously let you know. But it's just another unfortunate side effect of climate change.
Heather, how long does it usually go? I mean, we have to.
It's usually, it's either 2 to 3, it's usually 2 to 3 weeks. It depends.
Into March?
Yeah, the state has never wanted white buffalo to start before the end of hunting season. And hunting season ends, I think it's typically the second Saturday in February. So white buffalo always has to wait until mid-February before it can begin. But this year it's just been an even more extreme issue than it has in prior years.
Generally, we've had snow on the ground this time of the year, and the program works better when there is snow on the ground than cold weather. Yeah. My concern is, and I think the chief will have to follow this very closely, and that is that we need to look at our deer encounters with automobiles next year as a result of the fact that the management program will be very much reduced this year from previous years.
Yes, that's a concern that white buffaloes expressed, and I can report they're very upset about losing ground through the poor harvest this year. So they're very anxious to help us find solutions.
Well, this happened to us once before, not exactly the same way, but the year that we consolidated, for some reason, it's really inexplicable. We missed a year in terms of the deer management program, and there was quite an uptick in deer car incidents following year as a result of that.
Bernie's right. So we had just been making up the lost ground actually from that lost year, and so it's really unfortunate that we may have another really low year. And I think you're right, Bernie, that Chief, we could see it unfortunately in motor vehicle.
They have managed. Yeah. I mean, they have managed to remove a fair number of deer. It's just that they're not getting the numbers that they would typically get, right. But they're expending the same amount of man hours, so they're seeing the cost escalating. So that's right. That's something that we're looking very closely at.
And it's something certainly that gives us more reason to go back to the state and ask to move it earlier, perhaps. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carmiller.
Yeah, I wanted to just a quick report that there's a subcommittee, which I'm on, of the Complete Streets Committee that's working on the sidewalk master plan, and you might have seen, I think Sam Bunting, who's the chair, wrote a letter to the editor inviting comments from the public, but we're really just updating the plan of ideally where sidewalks will eventually go when roads are put in. So, and we might be talking about policy, which of course will come to the council also, for instance, whether we should continue the policy of having sidewalks only on one side of the street or should we put them on both sides of the street, and where they should go? So if you have any comments, let me know.
Ms. Butler?
Yes, thanks. In a couple of our budget meetings, I think at our last meeting, we talked about a possible revenue source coming out of the Recreation Department where fees would be charged to different users of our athletic fields, et cetera. And at the last meeting of the Rec Department, they did sort of take, starting at the bottom for Tier 4 and Tier 3, they did establish some fees for usage of fields. Tier 4 would be non-resident groups, and Tier 3 would be Princeton resident or Princeton organizations, but not our youth partners, sports groups. And so we're continuing to reach out to them to have conversations about that. But I will warn you, as we get into those groups, there's going to be some pushback, and it goes along the lines of we're taxpayers, why should we have to pay to also use our public facilities? But in fact, I think there are a number of ways. We do this all over town. We do this with the pool, that everybody contributes to the pool, but you also join the pool as a membership. People, master swimmers, want to open the pool early to come master swim. They pay a fee to do that. So we really, it's not unusual that we do charge fees to try to cover specific uses. But just so forewarned is forearmed, that you may hear some pushback about that. People may try to get your ear. But I hope we'll keep the larger picture in mind. And Deanna, are you going to talk about the bid documents for Mary Moss? Then I'll leave that to the boss.
Ms. Quinn?
Yes, just really quick. PEC is investigating the application status of Central Jersey to open the food waste transfer station in Ewing, to see whether that can be configured to accept residential food waste. And depending on what is involved in that application and what the status is, they might be asking council to support a resolution, to come up with a resolution in support of the application, since it would be a big plus for our own food waste program and would help to spread throughout the county. And we're following up on the EV charging ordinance with Mr. Solo and Trishka that was left over from last year's business, to see whether we can move that forward. And the next night, the bike committee met, and Jerry Foster from GMTA presented about the Vision Zero initiative, and Jenny was there. Very interesting concept to support complete streets, and it seemed that was a theme on Saturday at the New Jersey Bike and Walk Summit at the Friend Center, and one of the keynotes was our own mayor, who covered our progress here to a lot of oohs and ahs from people who were suitably impressed. So I think sometime the perception among some in the community is that we're not moving fast enough on some stuff, and when you get around people who are trying to work toward the same goal, you realize that we're making progress, sometimes slow and steady progress, but enviable progress where other communities are concerned.
Do you want to talk about what Vision Zero is?
So Vision Zero is and I'd invite the mayor or Jenny to jump in. It's a data collection theory that looks to Vision Zero is 0 deaths from pedestrian and bike, for pedestrian and bike, and looking at data to reach that goal. So it was described, and I don't have my notes here, so Complete Streets is a toolkit to realize the goals of Vision Zero.
Which New York cities?
Yeah, New York, and one of the presenters who followed the mayor was Paul Steely White of Transportation Alternatives, talked about the progress that they've made in New York with Vision Zero. So it's not clear whether we're going to go in that direction. We'd be the first community in New Jersey to adopt Vision Zero, but it's intriguing and it's worth following up on. And there was a lot of Princeton was very well represented at the Bike and Walk Summit on Saturday. I think there were half a dozen or more members of the bike committee, and Deanna was there, and other members of the engineer's office, and so that's all for me.
Ms. Carr?
Oh, now I forgot the question I was going to ask.
Vision Zero?
No, well, I also, Vision Zero, it's called Vision Zero because it's zero deaths, but it's mainly improving safety, because some of the people at the meeting were saying, we don't have any deaths from pedestrians, which thankfully they are really pretty rare, but it's all about improving safety.
And it's not, right, it's not just deaths, it's also serious accidents
We don't
or
have to wait till we have a
serious
area.
crashes that cause serious injury. And I think the fundamental principle is that speed makes things a lot more serious if there's a crash. So if you have a car, I use this statistic in my remarks, but if there's a car going 40 miles an hour that hits a pedestrian or bicyclist, that that person has I think a 10% chance of survival, whereas if the car is going
At
20
40 or
miles an
above.
hour, they have a 60% chance of survival. And so just that 20 miles an hour difference, it's just the difference between, and so it's saying this is a priority, that we want our roads to be safe, and that you lower the speed limits pretty dramatically, and that it's not so much of an enforcement issue or an issue of driver responsibility or the users. It's really about how you engineer the road, and I don't know. There's a lot written about it online, but it's pretty amazing some of the things New York City has been able to do with it, and it'll probably be a concept that gets talked about at our boards and commissions dealing with transportation.
Oh, I remember my question for Tim. It was about the composting. Are you coordinating with Lawrence at all? Since they have a composting program, they'd probably be interested. So I don't know if not you, the Environmental Commission.
No, but I can bring it back to them and see if they would like to.
Especially when you just ask somebody to sign on to something, it's not a big lift for them. They might want.
I think we're all looking to this Ewing facility as the answer to a lot of prayers. Thank you.
Well, because they're already doing some, aren't they? From
They
the
are.
Windrows
They
or
are
something?
mostly institutional and
Okay.
and commercial.
Okay, I have two quick reports. The first is just a heads up to council that the Terrace Eating Club is applying to the Historic Sites Council at their meeting on March 9th to expand the boundaries of the existing historic district. For some reason, they weren't included with the other eating clubs. So it's a heads up. And
Mayor, can I ask a quick question about that? That's not some sort of prelude to a change in tax status.
one would hope not. I mean, I would say Princeton has quite a few historic districts. I mean, I'm sure the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood would be excited if they thought that getting historic district would mean they would become tax exempt. But clearly that's not our position. That is the concern, because there was the lawsuit that went up to the Supreme Court.
Cottage?
Right, I believe
Yeah.
so.
Back, when was that? About 10 years ago? Was it that long ago? Just for Mark's edification, you might want to get on the Google machine and take a look at that, but we ought to keep our wits about us on that.
Yeah, I agree. And then the second is everybody should have received a copy of this letter that I wrote to the Division of Taxation, and just wanted to formally let everybody in council know and the public know that we did write a letter to the division asking for relief from a requirement to completely renumber our tax maps. So when we consolidated, we made sure that there were no duplicates in terms of the numbering, but the state legislation says you need to start with one at the upper left-hand corner and then go across. And when you have a consolidation, that requires an incredible amount of disruption, and it would be an expensive prospect. So,
Very expensive.
correct, $100,000
I mean, the
expensive.
public might be interested. This is not some insignificant cost to bear.
Plus, it would, everybody's records, personal records, it would change too. It would be a
Correct.
big hassle.
Correct. So we're waiting to hear back from the state, and we'll keep everybody posted on that.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes, thank you. Does Neil, does our tax,
He was at the
Assessor-
meeting, yeah, as
does
was
he
Deanna.
have a role to play in terms of, I mean, is there more advocacy we can do in terms
Well,
of
the one
letter writing?
person who was not at the meeting was Marty Gould, because he had a last-minute emergency, but I think he can be an advocate. I know Neil has been in touch with him, and he's supportive of our efforts.
Okay.
And if you know anybody at the Division of Taxation, you can put in a good word. Are there any other staff reports? No? Okay, so then we'll move on to, oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry about that. I've got a few updates. I'll try to keep it short. We were contacted by New Jersey American Water.
I don't know if you're right in your mic enough.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. New Jersey American Water is proposing to replace the water main on Route 27 between Snowden Lane and Harrison Street this summer. They had an initial meeting last week with New Jersey Department of Transportation, and we will be meeting with them tomorrow, police representatives as well as engineering. So we will be talking about what a potential schedule might be. It looks like it's a 3-month project. They had proposed to start the work after Princeton University is out of session and after graduation. But the one thing we do need to remember is that starting at the end of June, 206 will be closed for 4 months. So that's going to be a big topic of discussion of how are we coordinating two projects of such a length. It's probably about 2,000 feet of water main work plus all of the services, and of course it's down the middle of the road. So we will keep you updated as to the discussions and what's occurring with the coordination of the two projects. I've been working with the planning board on the circulation element of the master plan. We've been updating various maps, and Lee has been working on updating the text to incorporate the bike master plan. And I think the indication I've heard is that we're looking to attend the March 16th planning board meeting with the first initial draft of information as a work session. We're still working with DOT on the bike share RFP. We had great interaction on Saturday at the bike walk meeting. Mike Russo from New Jersey Department of Transportation Local Aid was in attendance at our bike share session, and so he's aware of the interest and the buzz about bike share, and he's working actively with us to get that moving. Let's see, tonight you have before you the tree clearing on Cherry Valley Road contract, and if that moves ahead and the contracts come back in time, that work could potentially start as early as later this week, because it does have to be finished by March 30th by our environmental permits. 2 more points. DEP has issued the new stormwater draft permit For comments, the comments are due in April, so we'll be working with the Public Works Department to really review that and see what implications that has for the municipality as well as staff and operations. But one of the things, just to make you aware of, is that there will be a mandatory training requirement for elected officials and boards that do any sort of review on development plans and applications. So that would be coming up next year, and the timeline is that you would have to do the training within the first 6 months, and it's good for your term of office. And then last, like Joe had mentioned, we're still working with the Mary Moss Playground bid documents, but we did submit them last week to Mercer County Planning Department for review in accordance with our terms for the Mercerette Playground. So we're moving ahead. Hopefully we'll be getting the subcommittee back together again soon to discuss filtration or no filtration, but that's moving ahead.
I thought you were going to make that a separate item on the bid doc, and we were going to wait and see what the, wait until after we got the bids back, no?
That's one option, but we need to review it at the subcommittee level as well before we move ahead.
Okay.
That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Okay.